Good evening and welcome to Slam the Gavel, the show that tells it all regarding family court, other court issues, as well as CPS. I am your host, Maryann Petri. You can find me, my books, and blogs on dismantlingfamilycourtcorruption.com. The books, Dismantling Family Court Corruption, Why Taking the Kids Was Not Enough, came out in 2020, followed by Cry Out for Justice, Poems of Truth. And followed by that was Raised by These Wolves, How Family and Federal Courts Are Failing Our Children. In 2024, July 17th, came out as a bestseller, Raised by These Wolves, Volume 2, Child Trafficking Through the Foster Care and Court Systems. Please feel free to buy me a coffee to help keep this podcast going. I'm so happy to have a return guest on. I have Ray Sipult back on. He was last on my podcast, April 28th of 2023, Season 4, Episode 84, where we discussed speaking out on his CPS case and participating in a mass federal tort suit with other parents. And I welcome you back to the podcast, Ray. How are you doing? And we're going to talk about some personal retaliation that's been going on.
Oh, wow.
I know.
Well,
Yeah, I threw a lot at you, huh?
yeah. I had to slow down on some of my complaints and start answering other people's issues because it was getting too intense.
Oh, I can't
Uh,
imagine. What was being done?
I don't know. It was multiple people from what I've managed to figure out were like calling the fire department on me and having my door busted in and like 11 at night. I'd light a barbecue grill to enjoy family time.
Uh-huh.
I have two boys, so I take care of them all the time, and
Right.
very terrifying. Uh, Causing damage to my property. It's just, I don't know.
Is
Lack
it
of sleep.
is it because you're speaking out and you are also in this book, Raised by These Wolves, the first one?
I don't know. I mean, I never tried to put that together, but it's a possibility. Um, I do talk to a lot of people here in Sedgwick County about their cases
Mm-hmm.
and other counties in Kansas. So I'm always on the phone,
Just, yeah, exactly.
always.
Like how often, how many people do you talk to a day, would you say?
At least 5 to 7 at a bare minimum.
Mm-hmm. I mean,
And on a
sometimes,
really big,
go ahead.
on a really busy day, maybe more.
Yeah. Yeah, this is happening to me as well. Sometimes I get a couple days off, but sometimes it's 5 people a day. So I get it.
And it might be an hour, it might be 20 minutes, but you just got to set time to the side and listen because I know I've had times where I can tell they're losing it.
You're right.
Yeah, they're losing it, and you want to stay on the phone with them, just help them get through that, and then they'll be fine. It's like they're having flashbacks.
Is it
And then
most,
others, they just want to question
uh-huh.
research.
Is it mostly family court and CPS or just a CPS problem?
Mostly CPS problems and going through the court system. Uh, they find out their lawyer is not answering questions or doing like their due diligence, things they should be known to be doing and looking into. And it's the same story each time, just a different cycle, a different
Mhm.
set of families. It's always the same,
Mm.
the outcome usually when they tell you to do all these classes and you go. One thing I'm noticing is they're not submitting the paperwork to the official record, even though the lawyer or the guardian ad litem or the agency has the paperwork that the parents completed the program for the reintegration. That's a really big one.
Okay, so when the parents do
'Cause
these programs, they're not submitting it to, where would they submit it? Just to the agency?
I would assume that they submit submitted to court. Like I said, I don't get to go in the courtroom anymore. They kind of booted me out. But say a
Yeah.
parent has to do management or parenting classes, I guess they'll get a certificate that they have to take in there to show that they completed.
Hmm.
And some of these parents will have packets like with their bills or finances. The agency will say that they didn't have water and they got a credit on their water bill, or they don't have electric and they've been paying their electric, you know. They're not admitting that into evidence that they're stable to raise their family, and they're using it against
Is it
known facts.
right? Yeah, they somehow leave the facts out, and then are you finding they're changing their last names, these caseworkers?
Yeah, they're changing their last names, moving to different counties, different agencies, getting promotions, somehow staying connected with like offices like the WIC departments or DCF or some of their sub branch contractors.
Hmm.
Somehow they're still in the school.
So they're still in this, they just get moved around if there's like complaints on them, do you think?
Either that or they get overlooked and they get promoted, or you try to file a complaint against a social worker with like the behavioral sciences board that would look at that. There's people in other counties and other states that's telling me that they just dismiss their complaint like they don't have to hear it. They can vote not to.
This is terrible. This is terrible.
And that goes for your lawyer and everybody else. I mean, it's not just them.
Right, right. In fact,
Not just them.
I may have told you, but on my first caseworker, I notified the governor because he was brand new, and his office did take action. They rattled the cage. And then I talked to the head of the caseworkers. And I said, "What happened to the first caseworker? You'll love this." He said, "They removed her from the field because she's not fit to be around people." Whereas when she was on the witness stand, okay, she told the judge that she's no longer in that position because she's been promoted. Now she has a desk job. So she didn't really tell the truth on the witness stand that she was taken out of the field because really, seriously not fit to be around people, much less children.
Yeah, if you're not fit to be around people, you sure shouldn't be around children because you can't get along with adults.
Right. 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 Oh my goodness. Yeah. No people skills. These caseworkers have no people skills. And I feel so bad for these poor, parents. I think the last time we talked, you mentioned Representative Ford Carr helped you.
Yeah, I went to him seeking help with another individual about their personal situation. And he had basically asked me what I wanted done. And I told him that I wanted to see St. Francis Ministries closed.
Hmm.
Well, that dream came partially true in Sedgwick County, where another agency called Amber of Hope got open. And I remember Representative Ford telling me in a conversation that most employees from St. Francis would just quit and move straight over to Amber of Hope. And I had no doubt that he was right. And that's exactly what's happening.
So Amber of Hope is another foster agency.
Well, see, here's a unique story behind Amber of Hope, and I don't know all the facts, but I do know that Amber of Hope specialized in adoption agencies. Okay. Youthville used to be here in Wichita and other counties, I guess, back in the day. And
Hmm.
then they kicked them out for St. Francis to come out. Well, from what I hear, Youthville was nothing nice. It was very, very bad. And
Hmm.
now they've merged the two to That's all I understand.
So they merged Amber Hope and St. Francis together.
Well, I'm not quite sure on that. I can tell you that they took St. Francis Ministries, the agency,
Mhm.
away from Sedgwick County. They replaced it in Sedgwick County with Amber Hope and Youth. St. Francis Ministries is still allowed to operate in the rest of Kansas.
Mm-hmm.
Even though they've been in embezzlement schemes and several other things, you can just, easily verify.
So they're allowed to function throughout Kansas.
Yeah.
And
All about that dollar right there.
oh,
They
yeah,
all pull from the same pot.
uh-huh.
What,
That
what what's that called? ASFA, American Safe Families Act, where the Family First Initiative came through for the funding.
1997, Bill Clinton. Thanks, Bill.
Mm. Yeah, thanks. You opened up the doors, man.
Yeah. Yeah.
Ooh,
To destroy our children. Thanks.
they need to go back and revise that very heavily. I'm not saying that it wasn't a good idea at the time, but it's not now.
Mm-hmm.
You know.
Well, that also, I think what accompanied that was child support enforcement, from what I read about it.
Yeah.
Ugh.
And they work with DCF too. They have what do they call them? Third party contractors, just like how DCF contracts with St. Francis and Amber Hope. Same philosophy.
So these, if I can speak English, these third-party contractors, which would be, I don't know, these caseworkers that are in this Amber Hope. Am I right?
Amber Hope Youth Bill. They've combined both names.
Amber Hope Youth Bill?
Yes, ma'am.
What do you know what year that was?
Here for Sedgwick County, it was July 1st of this year. That's when St. Francis Ministries in Sedgwick County officially left and they took over here.
Oh, gotcha. Gotcha. Because I know you sent me this article that Kansas DCF could face court over years-long settlement. This was written by Zena Taher of the trying to find the newspaper, but this was written on September 7th of 2024. Wichita, Kansas. The Kansas Department for Children and Families may soon face action after a third-party report shows it is failing to make improvements as directed by settlement. And this is where we're talking. Since 2021, a third party has reviewed DCF's progress toward making improvements outlined in a settlement. The settlement came after Kansas Appleseed filed a class action lawsuit against multiple state agencies. They wanted improved mental health care access, more stable placements for children, and lower caseloads for caseworkers. Like that's going to happen. Very interesting article. Yeah. There's also another article associated with this. But this came out by the Associated Press, September 17th. Kansas-based cult leaders convicted of forcing children to work 16-hour days without pay. I just saw that along with the article attached to yours that you sent me.
Wow.
Yeah, it says 6 members of a Kansas-based cult have been convicted in a scheme to house children in overcrowded, rodent-infested facilities and force them to work up to 16 hours a day without pay while subjecting them to beatings and other abuse. Wow. Okay, so
And how about it was they just cram medication down their mouth to shut them up,
right,
whenever they want to speak out. There's always some new sick individual out there with a new twisted scheme. Oh, wow.
right. People don't understand
It's
that
just,
these foster kids are being used as medical guinea pigs.
Yeah, they'll test drugs on them, run
Mhm.
vaccinations on them. I know they did with my son.
Right. Yeah. It's
For
really
sure.
the thing is that they're taking a lot of the times, at least I think. Okay, we'll say most of the time, they're taking kids out of good fit families because they know they can get more incentive monies, Title 4B, D, and E out of them, depending on what the case is.
And then the family's forced to spend fight over crumbs or pennies after paying their bills to try and make sense of getting accomplishments done
Mhm.
through honest services, I believe.
Right. Yeah, it's pathetic. People are so distraught over having their child abducted by DCF, CPS, the alphabet soup of hell. And you're trying to stand up for your child and their rights and your rights, and it's just not happening.
Because there's a financial incentive to keep them basically locked underneath parents' Patriae, which is like Latin for the state being the parent. So instead of DCF giving these parents the money when they're in the home to maybe keep the lights on or pay the power bill because they struggled 1 month, it
Mhm.
doesn't happen. They lock them up and put them in a stranger's house and don't tell them where you're at. Don't let you come around. Don't let you bring their personal possessions to them. They don't get to have a room often. Keeps the vicious cycle going. And they can keep trading them and selling them.
Mhm. Mhm. And you mentioned Parens Patriae. I've covered this in my podcast couple years ago with Michael Sayin, and I believe that was 2020 and 2021 where we did talk about Parents Patriae. And the parents, it's their um right to raise their family. Ugh, this is a mess.
Fundamental right at that.
Right. Kind of that's in
I
the
don't
Constitution.
take away. Well, I don't know. Can they be taken away? Then why do they have these courts to enforce it? Yeah.
Right. Right. In fact, these courts, as I've said this before on my podcast, these courts are illegitimate. They're not even real. Um, that's why, I mean, I've always said family court should be abolished. I know I've said it in here, how family and federal courts are failing our children. And it's just horrific what, these stories. Here you are in the book. You
Oh
were
yeah.
chapter 13, lucky number 13, and you shared your story. It's not real long either. Your story wasn't long. It's just half a page. But there's other stories of people and their families and what has happened to them. People need to know.
That's why you have to encourage people that are in that book to speak to others so
Right.
that they can realize that they're not alone. You're not just a chapter in a book trying to get publicity. You're there because you care.
Right. Yeah.
I know you care.
Yeah.
You gave
Oh,
us the
thank
gift. Heard that story.
Mhm.
Yeah, we appreciate that.
Well, I appreciate people that can speak out and are not afraid to speak out. Yeah, this has been going on for how many years? It has to stop. I had Christopher Griffiths on, and he was a foster child. It's terrible what they do to these foster kids.
Well, not
Yeah.
only that, once they do it to them, do they let them go back to society after they pump their drugs into them? I guess beat them or put them around people they had no clue for extended periods of time.
Right. I
You
think
know,
I don't you think that this whole foster care system sets them up to fail?
I believe it does because, in all honesty, it's statistically proven that the child is safer to be at home than it is in foster care, regardless of the situation.
Hmm.
Um, Statistics state that children in foster care are twice as likely to be sexually assaulted, physically assaulted, become a medical experiment, such as drugs or different doctors or different schools. And your tax dollars are helping fund that.
And I've read um stories of some of these foster parents that are not even equipped to handle some of these kids that unfortunately may have violent tendencies because of what happened to them in a previous foster home.
Yeah, they're still growing up in that developmental stage. So
Hmm.
I assume it would be normal for them to act out if they
Hmm.
weren't being heard. But I don't know. I think everybody's situation is different.
Hmm.
And I think the legislature in all states needs to start looking at it on an individual type basis. Because
Right.
one person's situation may not be the same, and another may be that's the same in 5 other states.
Hmm.
To me, that's a systematic issue. Did I say that right?
Systemic.
Um,
It's a systemic issue everywhere.
right, right.
It's a
And if you have
cancer.
systemic issues, every problem's never being solved. Correct, like cancer, it doesn't go
Hmm.
away.
Yeah. And then it seems like I'm also noticing, I think you might be noticing it too with all the parents calling in, as I have parents calling in, that it's becoming more prevalent. At least I'm hearing more stories of these poor kids being taken away and given to abusers in these foster homes.
Yeah, I've heard stories. Child support, when they issue an order for child support, that's usually when a lot of that starts. Um, I guess the foster parents will get money from the agency or the state, and then they'll also get extra funds somehow, incentives
Yeah,
for
the Title 4
having the
E.
children.
Hmm. So you're
And under
saying,
normal, oh, I'm sorry.
oh, I'm sorry too. I didn't mean to interrupt. So when the child support starts, that's Title 4D. Then there's other
Right.
incentives that these foster parents get, which is Title 4E. So they're
Like
getting
tax incentive,
tax.
other
Yeah.
things. Adoption incentives, I think they get money for like the next 10 years.
Oh no, I didn't hear
Uh,
that.
large
Okay.
amounts, large amounts. Um, yeah,
So they get
those are just the ones
adoption.
I know.
Oh, they get adoption incentives for the next 4 years.
I think it's like $10,000 or more. I mean, I may be wrong, but I think that's when you file your taxes. That's the person that gets the child. But the person that's withholding the child, the agency under their control, parents, Patriae, they're getting bonuses
Mhm.
for terminating rights. Maybe if one enters a program, somehow there's some kind of black book scale that they use to pay each other like a bookie. That's the best way I can
Yeah.
explain it.
Yeah, exactly. And also, I had Laura Domek speak as well on my podcast. And if a child has a disability or an illness, they get the foster parent gets paid more.
Right. And they get paid even more. And usually I found out those are the children that get abused the most because they'll blame it on their disability.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I've had a lot of parents call me and tell me that. And I'm
Oh.
like, I don't put any names out there, but just children being starved and showing up to visits beaten.
Mm-hmm.
And they pointed out to the social worker, and then the social worker wants to try and blame the parent. Well, how is that possible if the child's not in your custody or control?
Exactly. Exactly.
How is that possible? Because you put it on paper and adhere to it as a fact when it's an allegation.
Mm-hmm. Well, they make such weird allegations. Like my second allegation, because they had me for emotional abuse again. And the allegation was, and I didn't have the kids because the judge took the kids away March 2nd, 2015, right? So this other allegation came through on April 15th that my lawyer and we didn't even know about it yet, about the second one, right? And we found out about it on June 9th. But the allegation was I would not let him ride his bike and I took away his Xbox. How can that happen when I have not even had the child? And how do you ride your bike in the snow? I think
I think it'd be a little hard. You have to have just the ice just right to maybe glide. That'd be interesting to see.
well, I know on the movie Road to Perdition, little Leo Caprio, he was riding the bike in the snow. But I think it had traction with the snow. Well, anyway, that's another podcast. But right, I mean, this is the thing that DCF and CPS, this whole alphabet soup, is these are one-sided interviews. Are you finding that with parents as well, that it's always a one-sided interview?
Usually do what we say or else, and then when they do what they say, I have a perfect example of a couple of parents right now. And they did everything that was requested of them. Like I told you, they put their packets together and everything, and the courts just didn't want to hear it. They knew that it existed, but they just pretended that it wasn't there. So I don't think it was a very favorable outcome for them, and I don't think what they want.
Well, it's concerning
So
with this article that Kansas DCF could face court over years-long settlement. The thing is, they drag stuff out, and there's there's collusion going on as well. Even in my federal case, when I was running that, the lawyer that I was giving all my exhibits to, and I had a sound case. It had merit. They didn't like that. But he hauled me into a boardroom and he said, I can tell you've been to court. This is how this case is going to go. I'm going to get this case dismissed because I know both those judges in the federal courthouse. So this is pretty much how it's going to go. And I put that into an affidavit that he said that to me. So there was collusion. So I don't know. I mean, is this what is going to happen in this Kansas DCF case over with a settlement?
well, about that article specifically, that was Candace Appleseed with Mike Faulkner. I have reached out to him, telling him about other parents here. So I don't know. He won't even return my phone calls. But I find it very interesting that even back then, when they were arguing for basically respectable conditions for these children
Mm-hmm.
and stop multiple moves, for the psychological issues, that they probably had a lot of these issues going on. And they probably were able to pick and choose what the judge would hear and listen to.
Mm-hmm.
And now they're getting worse in other areas.
Yeah, yeah. It flourishes elsewhere. It's just not fair. And I know the last time we had talked about the mass tort case that was taking place in North Carolina, that was dismissed.
Yeah, that got dismissed. We held him for a long time. I'm thinking about refiling, uh, looking for some parents here. Apparently, you have to file in your own state. But I do know that shortly before that case was dismissed, I was told by the governor when I was having some family issues going on that I couldn't have my cake and eat it too. And all I asked for was the return of my daughter and some type of compensation for my family to move on.
Who was the governor
So,
at that time?
Laura Kelly.
Hmm. Is she still governor or no?
I don't have too many debates with her, to be honest. It's more appointee, Carrie Lawnard, with the Office of the Child Advocate. Because you know these governors, they appoint designees to do things or carry certain things out, right?
Uh-huh.
And that person to this day has still never given me an answer. So when that first mass federal tort went out, one of my questions was, can I have an answer? I subpoenaed those records and still never got them. So even if you go to federal court, you need a lawyer or you need somebody that's highly trained on what to do next.
Right.
Because these people will type up 100-page motion. Like,
Oh
how are you
yeah.
going to argue that in
No,
court?
I'm like, in fact, I got a motion from, I just looked at it and it's like, I don't even have time to read this. Garbage. It was all garbage because I read the first 3 pages and it was like, well, that's not true. That's not true. None of it was just horrible what they put a pro se litigant in federal court through.
And you could just be asking for more time and they'll write a 50-page motion on why you shouldn't have.
Right. Right. And
Like,
that,
how do
that
they do that?
I don't know. Well, it's all in who you know. Like
Yeah.
I've told parents, it's like, okay, so your opposing attorney, did your opposing attorney work in the DA's department with the now judge? Did they work together there? Because the more people I talk to, they've gone through the breadcrumb trail and they have found that their opposing attorney and the judge had worked together at some point in the DA's department or in another capacity. So they all know each other.
Yeah. Yeah. They run in the same social circle.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And funny you should mention that because they shouldn't even be socializing.
So I'm not sure about the rule there. I know that the judge is supposed to be unbiased and the lawyer is supposed to represent the client.
Mm-hmm.
And I know with the lawyer and the client, I think they call that fiduciary duty.
Mm-hmm.
But when you have a position of power like that, it somehow like you're able to do things, you know? So
Yeah, it's
how do you
all
stop everything?
right. Right. Well, I won't keep you too much longer. Is there anything else you'd like to add?
Um, not too much. Just thank you for everything. You know, I
Oh,
appreciate being on the podcast.
and I'm really
Gotta
glad
keep
you were,
fighting.
yeah,
Fight
right. I'm
like the
glad you were
good.
in my book. And then I followed this book up with this one. And
Oh
it
yeah,
just, I mean, there's so many stories that people need to read so they can see what happened and what to avoid. So I'm glad you came on. I'd like to have you back on again because you were also on with Kelly Patton, the PI, talking about St. Francis Ministries as well. I remember that. Um, but
and she's
how?
wonderful. We'll talk
Oh
about
yeah, yeah.
it.
She's a good friend to have. I'm telling you, she's a fabulous person. And how do you want people to reach you if they have any questions?
Through you.
Through me? Okay. Okay. Well, hey, don't jump off, all right? Slam the Gavel is a podcast to help the public understand what really goes on in these courtrooms. I am your host, Maryann Petri. You can find me on Spotify, YouTube. Please like and subscribe. Apple, iTunes, iHeartRadio, Google, and other platforms I don't know about. Feel free to buy me a coffee to help keep this podcast going. And I totally thank you, Ray Sipult, for coming back on and updating us on what's going on in Kansas.